the Executive Director of the Institute for Family-Owned Business, otherwise known as IFBA. And like to welcome you all in person and those of you on Zoom, and those of you who might be listening to our recording later, welcome. Brooke Stewart, our Director of Communications, is our tech expert, and she's handing around a lovely handout framework piece that David's going to tell us about. We're recording this program for later viewing, and we'll send out contact information and this resource as well. I'd like to thank our sponsors, the Breakwater Group of Morgan Stanley, Maine Biz, and our host, Barry Dunn, for this great facility. We really appreciate it. As many of you know, the IFB is a nonprofit that helps family businesses succeed. And I'm super excited because out front we have this. This has been my 11-year goal to get us in the Maine Biz Plan Giving Guide. So we're in that. That'll be coming out this fall. Not fall, but this fall. It'll come out next week. So we have that. It tells you all about us. We're offering over 40 programs this year, both online, in person, and hybrid. And many of our educational programs happen right here. Fast approaching our 25th Maine Business Award. Who's been to the award before? Oh, good. We have a good turnout. So thank you. It'll be on October 8th at Thompson Point. We'll have our showcase trade show like we did last year with great food networking and more. You can see the brochure that I have out front with last year's, and we're busy working on this year's. We have Amanda Hill from New Center, Maine, our host, and she'll announce the winners live, like the Oscars. We'll have Matt Nielsen, a third-generation owner of Nielsen Macy Vanilla, come to talk about family-owned businesses and their amazing extracts and their connection to the James Baird Foundation. We're working on a little surprise. So you all came last year, you know, there's some surprises, so we'll see. And the next day, we're going to have a more in-depth conversation here with Matt. It'll be down the hall in the other facility, and it's going to be building a legacy succession and family business succession led by Tammy Buss, founder, family business advisor from Blue Roots. So she's the one, she's actually coming from Canada, and she's the one who, she's going to talk about the three-ring circle, not circus, circles about family business. And so we're going to have, so it'll be like 11 to 1, and you'll be able to have a chance to meet with him and talk more about his journey. Today, we're kicking off our third program in our How To's educational series called How to Marketing and Protecting Your Family-Owned Business. So those of you who have family businesses in here, please raise your hand if you market that you're family-owned. Okay, that's good, good. Okay, our speakers are Paula Stanton from Broadreach Public Relations, David Farmer from Bernstein Shur, Keith Turley from Turley Publications, and Tom Estabrook from Estabrook. In a few minutes, they'll give you a little intro on themselves. Our final how-to is mastering business finances from bookkeeping to strategic planning, bookkeeping versus controller versus CFO, and month-end madness. So we do surveys, which we'll ask you to do at the end. And some of the family businesses are like, you know, these finances, you know, they're a little challenging. Can you help us? So that's Thursday, November 6th. It'll be the same format as today. We'll have Jacques Santucci from Corpus Consulting and Nick Sampson. He's a manager and director at BNN. So at the end of this program, we'll hand out that survey and we'll also put it in the chat. And for those of you in person, you'll have a chance to win a door prize courtesy of Bernstein Shur. They didn't have gift bags big enough to put in there, so we have those up front, but we'll give those out. We really appreciate your input because it helps us plan our programs for next year. Now to today. So I'll give you a little context for this program, and then I'll invite Paula to continue the discussion. As we've all seen, today's media landscape is more challenging than ever. Audiences are fragmented across countless platforms, misinformation spreads faster than truth, and public trust in businesses is fragile. News travels at lightning speed, which means a single negative story or even a social media post can shape public perception before you've had a chance to respond. For family-owned businesses, the stakes are even higher, but so are the opportunities. 78% of voters say they trust family-owned businesses more than regular corporations, and 91% agree they represent what's great about America. That's an incredible advantage, but it also comes with responsibility. Your company name is often your family name, so its reputation is personal. And a leadership transition, a fire, or even a well-intentioned decision may quickly become a headline that impacts not just your bottom line, but your legacy. That's why proactive public relations isn't optional, it's essential. A strong PR strategy, including advertising and marketing, allows family businesses to tell their own story, highlight their values, and reinforce the trust they've earned over generations. A great example is our awards that don't just recognize excellence, they amplify it. They give businesses a platform to showcase their community commitment, their innovation, and their role as stewards of Maine's economy. Participating in programs like this is a powerful form of proactive PR. It strengthens credibility, celebrates the people behind the business, and puts your family's story front and center in a positive way. It fills the well of good PR because you never know when you might unintentionally deplete it. And for that, you need a crisis management handbook. Thankfully, David has brought us one. And we're ready for when the unexpected might just happen. So now I'll turn it over to our speakers and they'll tell you more about themselves and why we're all here today. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So I'm Paula Stanton and I'm Vice President of Broadreach Public Relations. I've been at Broadreach for almost 9 years. I started my career in journalism and then transitioned over to the dark side of public relations and marketing, and have been doing that for about 15 years. So I've worked in agency setting, I've worked in higher education, and actually when I worked in higher ed, the university I worked at had a pretty robust institute for family-owned businesses that I did a little bit of support for. So pretty comfortable with family-owned businesses, some of the dynamics, and we can talk a little bit about how reputation and public relations and those things, those unique elements for you, some advantages, some disadvantages, things like that. So turn to Keith.
Morning. My name is Keith Turley, and I wear a couple different hats. I do consulting up here in Maine for family businesses and other entities, but the main reason I'm here today is most of my career, and I'm still doing it, is I run my family's newspaper publishing business. We publish community weekly newspapers, hyper-local entities down in the Springfield, Massachusetts, and Hartford, Connecticut market. And I have a unique perspective because I'm second generation in a family business. So I run a family business and I help my customers, who are mostly family businesses, market themselves. So unique opportunities and challenges there.
Good morning. I'm Tom Estabrook of Estabrooks. I'm third generation in my family to run the business. We are a family-owned garden center in Yarmouth and Kennebunk, and we've just built a new production, 55,000 square foot production facility in Powell. So, we market our business as a family business, so that's why I'm here.
Yes, and we're all going to go see his place on National Family Owned Business Day on June 23rd, 2026. And I've been to it and it's beautiful and we'll have flowers and you can bring your kids. So we're going to have a fabulous time. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Farmer. I'm the managing director at Bernstein Shur for our public affairs and crisis communications department. I have to make a disclosure up front. My boss makes me. I'm not an attorney. I think they make me say that to protect me, but I'm not sure. I guess it depends on how you feel about attorneys. Nobody likes them until you need them. And that's kind of how it is with crisis communications. I often meet people on a very bad day and help them navigate those bad days. My background is I spent 17 years as a newspaper reporter and editor in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, and then the last 4 in Maine before transitioning to 4 years in the administration of Governor John Baldacci. After he termed out, I became a public affairs consultant and crisis communications consultant, and I've done that for 13 years. I will also just jump ahead and answer the first question. No, I'm not originally from Maine. I like to say, I've been here 25 years, but I like to say I'm from just a little south of Kittery. So I didn't get that question out of the way.
Great. So our format today is we're going to tee up a couple topics. I'll talk a little bit about, for what what is reputation, what's proactive PR. David will talk a little bit on crisis, but then really making sure that Keith and Tom are both speaking about, their firsthand experiences. So you'll hear us, kind of give you a little bit of the, here's what this is, here's what you should do here. And then the interesting pieces will come from these too, when we turn it over to them. So to start off, reputation. We all kind of have a sense of what is reputation. Reputation is that first thing you think of when someone, says someone's name. Do you like them? Do you not? Do you get that feeling like, ooh, I don't know about that. I don't have a great sense of trust there. But reputation, hopefully, isn't something that happens by chance. It's something that your business is intentional about. And there are a lot of different factors that go into it. Some you can control, some less so. But we'll start with some of the foundational pieces. So things like your mission, your values, what your voice is, even that visual identity. What are you conveying? And mission and values are two that most companies have them, but a lot of companies don't necessarily do anything with them. There's something that, you kind of do as a leadership team exercise, makes everybody feel warm and fuzzy for a couple of weeks. And then your other employees may know what they are, may not, but you're not really using them in an intentional way. So that's a first pillar of reputation, and where you can really leverage that and don't let it just sit there and be this thing that you did once. Think about what is that mission? What are those values? And how are we intentionally, training our employees on this, putting stories out there that solidify what we're saying. That way, it's not this thing that can just morph and change. You're always bringing people back to it. If one of your values is sustainability, for example, and you don't, you've got that in there somewhere, but you don't really do anything with it for a couple of years. It's not going to actually make it to your reputation. There's going to be this disconnect. You need to take action for it, whether that's, oh, we have EV chargers, or, oh, we're launching, a new initiative to look at how we can use all renewables. You need to bring it back around. Same with, kind of those more personality driven pieces of your mission. If part of that is kind of a very can-do attitude. At Broadreach, one of our values is make it happen. Kind of like, okay, sometimes we have things that we haven't really done an exact project like this before, but we're going to roll up our sleeves and figure it out. So if we're saying that's one of our values, and then we have a client come and work with us and give us, a problem, and someone on our team's first reaction is like, I've never done that before. I need a roadmap. That's going to be a misalignment with our values, and that client's experience isn't going to match. They're going to walk away saying, oh, they were very lovely people, but they really didn't know how to problem solve for us. They couldn't figure things out. So what we're saying in the market isn't matching what we're actually doing. So that piece of make sure you have some intentional mission, vision, values, and that you're putting it into practice. You can do that through employee reviews. You can do it through bringing it into your strategic plans for the year. Okay, we have these 4 pillars. Are we doing a communications initiative for each of these pillars? Are we putting some effort into those words that we, stuck up on the wall, put on an annual report, something like that? So those are the kind of some of those things you can do. And then as you get out to the external audiences, the reputation piece is, are you authentically communicating that? And you can't, when David talks about bad news and crisis, a great reputation is not going to make you bulletproof. It would be great if we said yeah, if you just do, positive stories, you can withstand any reputational crisis. But having a solid reputation is going to help you. Having people who even have, any baseline of reputation, even if it's kind of a neutral one, but they've just heard of you, you've been around, is going to be helpful if you do have anything negative come up down the line. So we'll have Keith and Tom. I've got a couple questions for both of you on family-owned business, how that changes some of that reputation. piece and how they've intentionally incorporated it into, who they are, and what their brands and businesses stand for. So kind of our first question is, why do you feel like it matters in today's marketplace that you're family owned?
I think from my perspective, it's crucial. There's a lot of noise out there now in marketing and in the business community. It used to be, a lot of family businesses were just, the corner store, what have you, and everything was local. Now you're faced with competition from big box stores, national chains, online companies, whether it's Amazon or like the pet food space, Chewy, you could go on and on and on. And so there's a lot of distraction for the consumer. And in my opinion, and I think the data shows, buying decisions a lot of times are emotionally driven. And that can work for you and that can work against you. And if you make a connection with that community, with that consumer on a personal level, because they know you, they know your business, you sponsor the Little League team, I can go on and on about the ways to do that. Tie goes to the one that they have the emotional connection with, and they'll make an extra effort to buy from their friends because that is a positive interaction. I guess probably the best way. One last thing about reputation. I had thought as you were talking, Paula, we run our businesses with capital, whether that's financial, physical, inventory, whatever. But there's reputational capital, and you need to have that capital at a high level for those times that David is going to talk about of crisis, and you will draw. I've done it. I've had to do it. I'm sure Tom has as well. You draw on that capital as you would any other resource, and it is perhaps the most precious capital you have. My grandfather once has always said, and I'm sure you've all heard the same thing from different sources, it takes a lifetime to build a reputation and a minute to ruin it. So you want to make sure that you maintain that. Just want to add that.
Yeah, I think for us at Estabrooks, there's two words that come to mind. Reputation is one and community is the other. And when we talk about community, the reputation follows. For us, we've always been a pillar of the community. As our business has grown, we've continued to support communities that we do a lot of business in, which builds up that kind of bank account when you do have an issue. And an example for us is, we sell flowers. What could ever be wrong with flowers, right? It's pie in the sky. We're decorating your home. It's wonderful. But, there are challenges with each individual customer. You can get a negative social media post on a customer that came in for the first time, and they go to a community board and they'll put a bad post up about your business. Oh, we had a bad experience. We didn't like this salesperson, so on and so forth. For us, when we build up that community bank, we don't have to speak. The community does for us. We've had multiple times that this has happened, and the number of community members that actually come to our aid in making comments and coming and basically saying, you don't know them as a family, you don't know them as a pillar of the community, and all of a sudden you should be talking to Tom or Tammy or one of the family members about your problem. You shouldn't be posting it here. And 9 times out of 10, that customer is taking that post down and it just disappears. So I think when you build that bank of community and you build that bank of reputation through your actions, I think that's a key part is actions. Is it the right thing for you to do in the community? Is it the right thing for you to support? And kind of we look at that support from a standpoint of, does it fit our business? We want to support the things that will also support us. So is it fundraisers within the community? Is it donations within the community? That correlate with our business model. You can't give to everyone, but what you can do is give to the core values that you have as a company.
I had one thing which was like, that's a very good point. Talking about the online, the Yelp reviews or what have you. Oh my God, it can be a nightmare. But to Tom's point, none of us are perfect. None of our businesses are perfect. You're going to get that negative reaction. And I've had a similar experience, and I've had the community come to my defense. If you have a negative review and the community doesn't come to your defense, you're doing something wrong. That should be a huge red flag. because you have clearly not connected with the community.
And I think, and also on those reviews for me is don't jump to react. Pause. Write maybe the response you might want to, or talk to a professional about what that response is. Don't react in the moment, slow down. That's not getting out there that quickly, so just react, because sometimes the customer that maybe is making that, lewd remark or whatnot, they're not that big of a concern to you in the overall aggregate. So, pause, be thoughtful in your response, maybe take it outside of the public realm, is kind of the way we try to triage.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one thing we recommend for a lot of our clients, especially once you get high engagement online platforms, is that you actually do have an articulated kind of rules of the road, especially now that Meta is, less moderated. That way you have something out there that says, these are the situations where we are going to respond, where we're going to, block content, that sort of thing. Because if you don't have that, you can create something where it's kind of a one-off decision, and you can accidentally, depending on your mood that day, am I already stressed? Do I respond to this person's comment like way up here, but a week later someone says something that's pretty similar and my response is totally different. So it gives you some guidelines and framework to take that pause and think through, okay, what is the articulated way that we're going to interact with this person? Do we reach out directly? Do we respond on here? Take some of that emotion out of it that can really escalate things in that space. So next question for you both is, because you're family-owned businesses, there are, more people involved in building that reputation and those values and visions. So talk to me a little bit about, especially as generations transition, how you incorporate, those potentially different points of view, different styles, and keep a, coherent brand and reputation in the marketplace.
That's a tough question. And being a multi-generational company, that is, something where strategic planning really comes into play. And also everyone getting behind, a messaging, having multiple generations in a company, it's really important to kind of set up a strategic plan, and understand what your core values are and how you're putting that out and kind of living that. And that correlates down to your employees also and how you support them within that also. For us, our core values are for the joy of gardening. So we want a happy environment. We want our employees to be happy. We want our customers to be happy, but you're gonna have people that are not gonna be happy. And in that instance, what do we do? So we have kind of three major rules, or two really big ones. Number one, you can't demean us. You cannot, disrespect us. And we have a choice to sell to you, and you have a choice to buy from us. And whenever you break those trusts, we have the same opportunity to say, no, we're not going to deal with you as you have to deal with us. So when you support your staff and you support your, mission, it's easier to make those decisions in those moments, because you can step away from a bad situation. You can say, does this meet our core values? And then you can make the correct decision. Sometimes you have to fire a customer. It just is what it is. They do not meet your core values. So for us, if you demean my staff, it's a deal breaker for me as an owner. They are my family. They are my lifeblood. They are my reputation. So if I don't support them in that way, how are they going to support me? So it's a passion of ours, and it rings true in everything we do as a company. So I think that for me is just a core value situation.
Yeah, I think I have a unique perspective, because we're not just a family business, but we're reporting on our community, which also includes family businesses. And I think our core values has always been fairness. And that always seemed to be kind of taken for granted, but with the scrutiny that the media is under these days, I think it's it's extra important. I mean, when I was growing up, my dad literally told me, he said, Keith, don't get in trouble in this town, because if you do, I am not going to keep your name out of the police log. It's true. And the reasoning for that is because if I do it for you, I have to do it for somebody else. And you have no idea the number of uncomfortable conversations I've had over my career, and my dad has had over his career, from friends, good friends who have said, hey, look, you know, my kid got a DWI, can you keep his name out of the paper? The answer is no. You have to be fair in my industry. And we're the only industry that I'm aware of where we intentionally aggravate our customers, because when our customers get in trouble, we're like, I'm sorry, this happened, don't shoot the messenger. And, you know, I think it gets incredibly uncomfortable, but if you stick to your core values, and those are, you know, fairness is our core value to our employees, to our customers, and to our community. If you stick to that, you know, you can weather those uncomfortable situations much better than if you compromise your core values for somebody over here and you don't for somebody over here, no matter what business you're in. You lose credibility, and, you know, you go back to the reputation. You know, your reputation is everything. And it all ties together, so.
Great. So we've talked a little bit about what reputation is, kind of those foundations, building it. David is going to talk a little bit about what those negative things can be, and then we'll end it on some positive stuff, so you don't all leave scared.
Well, when I was listening to Tom and Keith, the first thing I thought about was, my gosh, what if somebody got bit by a spider out of one of the plants in your shop? Or one of your businesses in your community filed a libel suit, right? I mean, that's the darkness where I go.
Never happens, never happens.
What kind of businesses are represented here? I mean, what do people do? Just what? Flooring.
Insurance.
Insurance, construction,
Store.
store.
African store.
Yeah.
Professional development.
What's that mean?
Executive coaching, leadership trainings, management trainings, yeah.
Anybody else?
Build work trucks.
Work trucks, like city trucks, garbage trucks, things like that? Yeah, are you located in Maine?
Yes.
So when I think about some of the things that you mentioned, what does a crisis look like? And a crisis can be a lot of different things. It can be a bad Yelp review, that could be a crisis. It could be an instance of workplace violence, which is unfortunately all too common, the Capitol in Annapolis, for example. It could be in construction, a workplace accident, or an accident adjacent to your workplace. Anytime you're talking to manufacturing, there's an opportunity for an injury or workplace dispute. Insurance, I'm not sure what kind of insurance, but a massive claim where a client is in serious trouble. And those can happen to any industry. And those are kind of the big picture. But then there are also leadership transitions. A board member resigning because they get mad. A dispute in the family over politics in a family-owned business. Workplace harassment. These can happen to any business. And if you don't have a plan in place, or you haven't kind of thought about how I would react to a crisis, you find yourself scrambling on the day of. Who do I call? What are my first steps? What are the things that I should be doing? And I know at my firm, every year we're supposed to do these business development plans and these year work plans, and I'm always so busy and I always put them off. And I always get in trouble. It's always the same. And I'm sure it's the same for you. We've got to make our business function. So thinking ahead is difficult. But the framework I've provided, and it's just one. I mean, you could probably plug in the AI and get a different one that's just as good. Don't, because you're feeding the machine of our own demise, not create the Terminator. But it's kind of a planning document that will help you identify, okay, who are the decision makers in a crisis? What are the steps we take in a crisis? Who needs to be on our call list? What is our business continuity plan? Keith, when we were preparing, I think you talked about a flood. Mm-hmm. What is our business continuity plan if we have a water main break, an electrical outage? You know, have you done those things? What is the least likely thing and the most likely thing you might expect? And so then you kind of build out, who is the final decision maker? Who is your spokesperson if you have to go on the record? It used to be that they said the only time a gentleman should appear in the newspaper is upon the occasion of his birth, his marriage, and his death. And oh, if we could be so lucky these days. So who are your decision makers? Who's your counsel? You know, what are your department heads? Do you have all that information, depending on the size of your business, in a hard form where you might be at your house after hours? If you lose access to your server through a cyber attack, you know, all these, so a paper copy with your key decision makers. And then once you kind of find yourself in a crisis, whether it's a Yelp or a Yelp review or a complaint to the Maine Human Rights Commission, or a knock on the door from a police officer, what are the steps that we take? And I've kind of identified 7 of those. And I think that one of the things that you talked about was being thoughtful in your approach. The first thing you have to do is take the time to verify and assess the issue. What has happened? You know, what has happened? What do I know? What can I find out? Then it's to pull your team together. Who do I need to talk to? Because depending on the nature of the problem, the folks that you want in the room may be different. It may be operations. It may be public relations. You know, who those folks are. You want to assess the crisis level. A negative Yelp review is uncomfortable. A criminal charge is devastating. And you don't react to those in the same way. Then you put in place your crisis management, crisis communications plan. You put in place your team. You start developing your response and your messages. Now, when we get to this stage and I'm helping clients, the place I start, the first question I ask is, what is the right thing? And you think, well, that's pretty obvious, right? What is the right thing to do? What would I want done? But it's not always obvious because there may not be a right thing. There are only varying degrees of bad, and you have to pick which of the bad that you are more comfortable with. You have to identify your stakeholders, both internal, external, family members, board members, customers, employees, because nature abhors a vacuum. And if you're in a crisis situation and you're not providing the information, then that information will be filled in otherwise. Then you have a system where you kind of approve your response and your messages. And then finally, you look at it at the end of that first day and you say, what did we do? What did we accomplish? Where do we go to next? What happens here? We evaluate and we start it over. And the good news is the news moves fast now. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers, but we bombed Iran in June. It seems so long ago. It's kind of off my mind now, but that was a big deal for a hot minute. And now it's something else. So the news moves fast, but it will move without you as well. So my advice would be just broadly is to take a look at this and kind of come up with your own version that works for your business and put those pieces in place. I'd also say, just like if you were building a new facility and you were ordering windows, you would go to somebody who sells windows. If your business is not crisis communications or marketing, you shouldn't know how to do that. I mean, unless that's part of your core function. You're doing other things. You're experts in construction, machinery, insurance, retail. And those are different than having a TV camera 6 inches from your face answering tough questions, or facing a backlash on social media for some perceived slight. So you shouldn't feel bad about not knowing exactly what to do, because it's hard. And especially with a family-owned enterprise, it's very personal. And, you know, so it's good to have somebody who can help you step back. And I will just say, as someone who lives in Portland and lived here a long time, I choose my businesses by the people who take the time to get to know me. I go to my local family-owned bookstore instead of the big bookstore, because I walk in and we talk about the books I've read and that they've read. You know, the bar I go to the most, I like that the bartender knows my name. That's important to me. And so, you know, as a person, you know, those types of atmospheres that you can build, I defend my bookstore and my bar. Because I feel like they defend me. So that was a lot. And I'd be glad to answer any particular questions. I mean, what is a crisis has changed over time. There was a time when a cybersecurity crisis where data has been stolen or breached was massive. I don't know about you. I get 2 letters a week now they've gotten everything twice. The only thing that hides me is I have no money, and the law of big numbers, right? So why would they come after me? But, what constituted crisis has changed. I'm glad to talk to you or answer any questions you might have about what that might look like for you or your business. What the things are that you're afraid of, afraid of spiders. And,
Okay, comfortable, please.
my wife, I said my wife.
That's my customer.
Yeah. I'm just a shovel guy, man. I'm just a shovel guy.
Know your place.
Know your place. So how can I help you? What can I answer for you if you have any? I would just love to hear about your businesses and what the things are that keep you up at night besides payroll and tariffs and insurance costs and those minor things.
I just want to say you're the most fun crisis management person I've ever met. And I want to engage you just to engage you.
Well, listen, I also offer therapy at Freight, and I will come and do stand-up, but with no fruit allowed, so.
You charge double. for
Great
your
Falls
therapy.
Comedy Club would appreciate you, David. And another comment, if I can just be bold and say, what I also hear you're talking about is building ethics and integrity within what you do. And I feel, because I work in the realm of professional development, I feel like that needs to be in the forefront of our minds as we think about who we are, how we show up, and what we deliver to our communities.
You're absolutely right. Bad things happen to good people.
Sure.
Bad things happen to good businesses. Accidents happen. I live in Portland, it's hard to build in Portland. If you tried to expand your business in Portland, in a neighborhood, try to build a deck or a new facility, grow facility. I mean, it's very complicated. And even though may not feel like a crisis, if you have 10 neighbors saying they're going to destroy my neighborhood, they're cutting down the trees, they're, the parking lot, it certainly feels like a crisis. You're just trying to grow your business. But it is, I think, when you think about doing the right thing and what that means, if you start in a crisis situation with what would I want if I were the customer? What would I want if I were the aggrieved party? What do I want if someone asks me about this? What makes me feel best about how I would have handled it? How am I being fair? Am I being thorough? Am I being thoughtful in my response? And I get called all the time and folks say, what are the things that I can say to make this stop and go away? It's like, I'm not a wizard. There are no spells that make bad news go away. No magic incantations. The best you can do is understand sometimes bad things happen and you have to get through them. And the best way to get through them is to look at what happened and determine what the right thing is and do the right thing. And even if it's a bad story, even if it's bad news, even if you take a hit to your reputation, you're in a much stronger position if you feel righteous in your own actions. And I believe that your customers will see that as well, because they recognize in their own lives that people make mistakes, that bad things happen, and that they're out of your control.
We usually say, what would a reasonable person expect of you? We're not trying to talk to the person who is the most engaged on this topic, the most upset. It's what would a reasonable person expect? They're going to expect that sense of ethics, accountability, acknowledging what happened, and okay, here's what we're going to do. So a lot of times people can fixate on the loudest voice. But that reasonable person is usually a good one to have in mind when you're approaching some of this.
And I will say that one of the places that I come in kind of a rub point when I'm working with firms that are in trouble is with counsel, because their job and my job are different. And you have to manage that difference and you have to think about it. They're loath to have someone say they're sorry. Hate it. Hate it. But sometimes I'm sorry is all it really takes. And you kind of have to look at that, the fact pattern, the risk, potential risk of litigation, and then the humanity of it, and balance those two competing needs. And it's good if you're in a high pressure situation and you have, your powerful litigator attorneys and, they're ready to go to war. It's good to have a perspective of what is something less than that might be as effective, and just to ask those questions. The outcome varies depending on the situation, but have those questions asked.
So I know we talked a little bit when we were doing our prep about some real world situations you guys have had. And, there's bad news and then there's crisis. I think, you both had a couple in the bad news category, but those still feel like a lot and they can turn into a crisis if you don't manage it right. So any examples, kind of how you've navigated this, how you've prepared for knowing that these things can happen?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind. I mean, first of all, the bad news is I'm in the newspaper business. All seriousness, the industry is obviously under extreme stress. So it makes managing the business even more stressful. But, a specific example of a stress that we had, and this goes back a number of years, was we got flooded out. It was remnants of a hurricane came up through central Massachusetts, and our main printing facility ended up with 3 feet of water in our press room. And we were surrounded by water on 3 sides. Now, at the time, we had a terrific compliance manager who dealt with OSHA and EPA, and we never had a fine. I was very grateful for that. He was terrific. The one thing that he kept pushing the family to do was, do you have a plan if we have a disaster or something like that? Well, yeah, we'll get to that. Well, we never got to that. What we relied on, and it did carry us through, was, again, we go back to the reputation. There are 2 reputations. There's internal and external. Your reputation externally is with your customers and the community, but your internal reputation is with your people and your team, and that comes from how you treat them, and how you make them feel part of literally the family. And that part really came through for us because this was on a Sunday and we were surrounded by water on 3 sides, and on the 4th side were railroad tracks. And we literally had employees coming across the railroad tracks and asking, what can we do? This was salespeople, reporters, editors, production people. It's a wonderful thing, except they were railroad tracks. And, we're especially in the prep work, David and I were talking about it. That probably wasn't the best plan. We didn't have a phone tree. We didn't have a plan for what happens if the plant, there's a fire or a flood or what have you. And, fortunately it worked out. But, on the one hand, I was incredibly gratified to have all these people that we didn't even call show that they cared about the company and about what we did, and came in our time of need. And it saved us. It truly saved us. In retrospect, I wish we did have a more formal plan for an event like that. And it would have made things a lot easier. But again, that's where that internal reputation really carried the day, and all those years and years of work paid off. So.
For me personally, being a smaller company, I think getting out into the community, networking with other professionals, maybe in PR, is a good idea to have them in your Rolodex. Luckily, I am good friends with Linda Barrel. And when crisis has happened in different fashions, I have a speed dial because we vote together and we do dinners and have fun. So having those folks in your back pocket to bounce things off. For me, I had a situation where I was sitting on a sustainability committee for the city of Portland, working on an ordinance for pesticides. hot topic. We worked over 2 years on this committee to come up with a very balanced thought process between industry, environmentalists, a whole host of things. They picked me and my business out to land-based some activists. So I was in the Portland Press Herald. I was in a whole host of different things. You know, my reputation was called into question, so on and so forth. Personally, I was taken back. I had done so much to build my reputation from my perspective. Here I was in a crisis. It's again, stop. Don't react. Figure out where it's going. Come up with a plan. Fortunately, I had enough in the bank. I didn't have to say a thing. I had industry leaders writing the editors. I had customers writing the editors. I had community leaders writing the editors. It was gone within a heartbeat. I didn't have to think about it. But reaching out to an opportunity to talk with a professional and at least say, here I am. And like you said, news moves fast. But personally, I felt bad. So I think there's a piece of when you're getting in this crisis also is to have a place for you personally to kind of work through these problems, realize that it is not necessarily your problem. Continue on with your legacy and your thought process of where you're going with your business and your reputation, and that this is one check mark that is here and gone. And then continue to do the things to build even more back. You know, similar thing, we were building the new production facility. We had a situation where a bunch of folks, well, they clear and cut down all the trees. So what's the right response? You know, and the right response was, what do? We beautify and add to nature. So having a thoughtful thought process on that response was, yes, we cut down all the trees. We did. And that is a negative impact, and we agree with you on that. But what will be put through the facility will actually add to the environment here in the state of the Maine year in and year out, and our carbon footprint is actually less because of what we do. And that thoughtful response turned the tide, and we had media pick up that, and we had all kinds of positive media happen about our new facility, how it's more sustainable, what we're adding to the state of Maine, what we're adding to the environment. So we turned a negative impact situation into a much bigger positive impact for our country.
I think, Tom, you said something that's really important to recognize, and that's the personal toll that this can take. Seeing your name in the paper, having your friends call. And even though they're calling almost uniformly, the people who call are calling to check on you. Are you okay? I saw you in the paper. Is everything all right? It makes you feel like everybody in the world saw this. And that personal toll is real and it shouldn't be ignored. And you have to recognize that it does. It's okay that it hurts. I mean, it was hurtful. And that's why, you know, to make sure that you have people who can provide you support internally, externally, people that you can trust, who can help you see it from outside. And that doesn't have to be someone like Paula or myself. That can be your CFO or your head of human resources or anybody that you trust who can take a kind of a step back look and say, okay, this is not ideal, but this will pass. Or maybe we need to take some proactive steps here to make sure it passes. Or worst case, oh, maybe we did something wrong and we need to fix it. And, you know, so you don't have to carry that weight alone, and you shouldn't try to, because as I said before, nobody has all the answers to everything that can come up.
Yeah, quick comment. I just can't hold back. This is so timely and pertinent to what we're talking about. It's to talk about reputation, Yelp, online, how you handle it, how you respond. I became aware of a group. It's a coffee shop in New Hampshire. I live in Portsmouth, so I'm on the wrong side of the Memorial Bridge. Forgive me. And by the way, Tom, it's an honor to work with your staff. And I used to work at Paylocity. I was the rep that worked with the team.
Yes.
Yeah, it was such an honor to work with you guys, employ you fine. So imagine coffee shops where they're very intentionally making it bright, fun, and vibrant, and an atmosphere where everybody feels welcome. Yet The 2-star Yelp review that came through said, this place was disgustingly pro-women, and just walking inside, I immediately, as a man, felt unwelcome as a male, probably wouldn't return. Now, as you guys are talking about, this owner did not react, did not respond quickly, and thought about it, and got enough feedback from friends, customers, people that support that came in. They literally took that disgustingly pro-women phrase and owned it, built an entire like industry of t-shirts, coffee mugs, sweatshirts, put a plaque on their wall, right? And people are like driving from Jersey to buy their coffee. People are revolving their vacation around where their locations are from Virginia. So it's just, I hope it's okay to bring in an anecdotal
Oh, yeah.
comment, but how responding,
Well, and I would just say, how brave, right? For a small business owner to take a look at a comment like that that's supposedly critical and then go, hey, you know what? I think I'm just going to embrace that. I'm going to make that part of our identity, this criticism. And I think that, that's a brave decision and a smart one in this case.
And to your point before, because this has turned me into a pretzel in my life, is trying to please everybody. This has twisted me up. So learning, growing emotionally, but as an owner of a business, you cannot make everybody happy. So I loved your comment about sometimes we have to fire a customer.
It takes a lot for me to fire a customer. I mean, honestly, it takes a lot. Again, for the joy of gardening. I mean, we're selling plants. We're not curing cancer here. I mean, there are no plant emergencies in the world. There's, like everybody's got.
You haven't been to my house, Tom.
Yeah.
There are lots of plant
I
emergencies.
know, when the emergency comes through the door, we can sell your wife anything. But the emergency usually is when the husband runs over the plants, when the wife's on vacation or on a business trip. I've got to fix this. The bank account is open. Can you come on Sunday? Can I get it delivered? I don't care.
All goes
what it
back to doing
costs.
the right thing.
Exactly. Support is a good thing.
All right, I know we're getting a little tight on time and I want to cover kind of the positive side of being in the media a little bit too, and then we'll open it up to questions, comments. David can do some stand-up if you'd like to continue. So you have the scary, you're in the news because something bad happened. But on the flip side of that are all of those great things that you can be talking about and doing when times are good. You really don't want the first time you do an interview to be when it's something bad. Like get that practice when you're just talking about some fun, fluffy things. So show of hands, kind of who, if the media called, would be like terrified, would not want to pick up the phone, even if it was about something positive, not negative. All right, that's good. We have one. Who would
You're
be
not
like?
being honest, I didn't see a single hand.
Who would be kind of neutral, like, all right, I'll do this if I have to, but I'm not excited about it. Right. And who is like, put me in front of the camera, I want to talk. Okay, so I think we've got, most people are in the middle here. And then we have a few real enthusiastic folks, which is exciting. So getting more comfortable with the idea of talking to the media, I think, is step one. And some of that is recognizing where your skills are in that, what you naturally feel like you can contribute, and thinking about the different ways you can do that. So we talk about this spectrum of control. So on one end of the spectrum of control is you sit down, you do a live interview with a TV reporter. You have very little control. It's live, there's no editing after. What you say is what's going to go there, and whatever questions they ask, you're kind of on the spot to answer or defer and handle. Then on the other end are things like sponsored content. And that's, you are paying a media outlet to publish this piece for you. So for clients we have that are really, kind of nervous, we kind of say, okay, well, maybe let's start here and develop your voice and see what you're comfortable with. And then we can start to move it along. Then maybe you're writing a piece of byline content. So that would be something like a how-to for main biz, it's something in an industry publication. A lot of industry publications do take content because as Keith said, the publishing industry is not, needs resources. So if you write something, say it's for, I'm making this up, but Construction Monthly magazine, they may take that and publish it as is. So you're just really developing that voice. You're starting to come up with, okay, how do I create messaging? But in a way that you're controlling. Then you start to move over things like op-eds that, again, it's your voice, but you're probably going to get a little bit, more comments, pushback there. You're taking a stand on something. And then we move into things like, print interviews. Print, usually you have a little more time to be thoughtful, and it's a two-way conversation more. Sometimes you'll get emailed questions, so you can shop it around your team. Then, things like radio, TV for a pre-recorded, so something that you're getting to sit down, it's not live. And then on the other end is that live style, whether it's, radio, you're on main calling and you don't know what kind of question's going to come up, or you're doing, you're sitting down and doing a live segment there. So there's a lot in there. So when everyone thinks of media, they immediately go to this end, like, oh God, it's a live interview. What if I say the wrong thing? But there are a lot of other things you can do in there that might fit your comfort level. And you can start on one end and move up, and then you might hit a point where you're like, yeah, I'm good here. This is where our, company, our brand, where I personally feel comfortable and operate in that space. So when you start doing this, say you're moving more towards the less control and you're doing interviews, a good rule of thumb is to come up with, 3 talking points. You're probably not going to have a lot of time to get in that much more. Sometimes I work with clients who have like a novel, and every detail is so important and every piece is essential. And you have to say, realistically, this is going to be like a 90-second TV package. You are going to have maybe 2 sound bites. So we've got to do some cutting here. And distilling it down to, if I can only say 3 things, what are those things? What is the most important for me, for this audience, for the message I'm trying to get across? And depending on the type of story, it might be different. Are you a thought leader? Is someone interviewing you because there's a, aluminum shortage and you are a company that makes cans for craft brewers? That's going to be very different than if you're being interviewed to comment on, some changes that are going to affect your business, or if you're in a situation where it is for a negative story, the type of talking points you have there. But actually jot them down, think through them. You can, if you have time, you can bounce them off someone else. But get those 3. You don't want to deliver them in a robotic, scripted way. You want to be conversational and not ramble too long, but have them put them down. That way, you've given some thought to them, and it's not like, oh, I'm on the spot here, or you don't try to cram everything and then end up really saying nothing because you've tried to come up way too much. Then the next piece is really thinking about what stories you have to tell, and having that be a part of what your company, your business does, is share what's happening. If you have that kind of culture where that, this department just did this really cool, innovative thing, or they have an intern that came and that intern helped them build this new model, and you're going to be testing it out. Like, that's a cool story. And a lot of times people are just not in the habit of sharing that up. And, you might get to whoever is your marketing communications director, and they may have no idea what's going on in manufacturing department because they're not interacting. So create that culture of sharing stories. So you know what's going on. Also sharing expertise, whether you're a CPA or an attorney or a college professor, or chances are that people in your organization have expertise to share. Even the expertise of being a family-owned business, that is its own set of expertise. You know how to navigate family dynamics, intergenerational challenges. These are all things that are unique to you that you can use as an opportunity to get your name out there, position yourselves, and really get some visibility. So we'll have Keith and Tom talk a little bit about, some of the things that they've pursued in the earned media space, kind of the pluses, the minuses, things that have went well, things that have maybe fallen a little flat.
Boy, do I have a lot to say about this. Can we go to 11 instead of 10? No, again, I have a unique perspective because I have a foot in both worlds. I'm running a family business, but I'm also a media company. And I think to the point, understand the context of the call. If a reporter calls you, like with Tom's example, with some of the negative press that he was initially getting, that that's going to be a different type of interaction with the media as opposed to something more, fluff oriented, or they're looking for, expertise or something like that. But, my advice to everybody is, be proactive with the media. In my world, in the print world, press releases that we get, I don't call them press releases, I call them free samples. But that's just me. And understand what, the message you're trying to get across. The ones we get the most are the banks with big oversized checks, donating to this group or that group or what have you. And it's fantastic. We try and run as many as those as we can, but, use that as a resource. As far as more subtle ways of doing it, I was telling a story in some of the prep. We do, in addition to the newspapers, we run advertising supplements within the papers. And we have one that just came out, and we do custom stories rather than using canned copy that was written in New York. We actually have our staff go out and talk to local businesses about whatever topic it is. And it was a fun story. It was about breweries, and the reporter, who's young, terrific journalist, but very young, just starting out. Story came back and she only quoted one brewery in the story. I'm like, well, that doesn't really work. And why'd you only quote one? Well, I called 5 and only one took my call. And I'm like, are you, seriously? If any news outlet calls you, whoever it is, and they're looking for your comment on, apple picking or whatever, and that's your business, or we do financial supplements as well. So whether it's the insurance industry or banking, you are getting free advertising and being put out there as an expert because you're being quoted in this article. Take that call. To have 4 out of the 5 breweries, and I get it, we're all entrepreneurs. We wear many hats. We're all very busy. And the last thing we want to do is talk to a reporter. I get it. But that can be some of your most important avenues to getting a message out there. Yes.
I'll echo that because Maine Biz often will reach out to me and say, who do you know who the stories who are for family businesses? And I'll reach out and say, hey, they want to do a story. They want to talk to you. And half of them will say yes, and half of them will say no. So that's part of why I said, let's do this program. So you guys realize you have a treasure trove of information and good things that you're doing. And I think private business, family business are very private and, they don't want it, they're humble. They don't want to toot their own horn, but you have great things to share. So if I reach out to you and say, hey, I was talking to Maine Biz and they want to run an article, they're very fair about how they do it.
Yeah,
Or
Maine
other
Business,
newspapers.
Maine Business is terrific, terrific
And
organization.
there's other newspapers I know
Yeah.
here too. So anybody who
Yeah.
needs out, so like they call me more than you guys do. But I was saying, if you reach out to me, I can help be a filter for that too, and give you a prep of who and what they are and help, because you have great stories to tell.
Yes, you are the experts
Yeah.
in your fields, and you should recognize that and lean into that. And yes, I will say, since my papers are a market, I don't feel like I'm saying anything inappropriate, but support journalism, please. Support your local newspaper, whether it's a Maine Trust paper, who, they're fighting the good fight. I'm thrilled with what they're trying to do to save journalism, or whether it's a small independent outlet or business journal like Maine Biz. Journalism matters. So please, that's my plug.
Drop everything. When someone calls, that's my motto. If the news station called this morning, I wouldn't be here. To be truthfully. Once you miss opportunities with the media, they stop calling. You are the expert in your field. Ask questions of what they want to cover so you're prepared. That's kind of what got me more comfortable with doing interviews, was having a conversation with the news editor or having a conversation and giving them what you think they should be talking about. It could be a hot button issue. Be ready for the negative and how you can spin that messaging into a positive. If you are an industry leader for your industry, you're able to do that. You're able to take, oh my gosh, it's so dry and we shouldn't be planting and we're not seeing rain for another week. Well, we've got drought tolerant plants. Yes, you might be concerned about your well, but we have drought tolerant plants. Oh, the native plants, they'll take and they'll do their thing and they'll seed. And then when it rains, we'll get more native plants. Think in terms of how you can spin the negative story they're trying to portray into something positive for your industry. Not just say, oh, it's so dry. We can't plant a thing. It's awful. The sky is falling. No, turn it into a positive with your messaging, with the media. And then all of a sudden, now granted, I sell flowers for a living. So it's usually a warm and fuzzy piece. But the big thing for me is when they call, ask questions and say yes.
I usually do about an hour worth of media training specifically to get people ready for the media. But I'm just going to skip all that and just go to the last that I make them sit through to get the real tips that they need. A couple of do's, a couple of don'ts, and a couple of tips. When you go into a media interview, 3, 30, 10. I want to make 3 points. I've got about 30 words. It'll take me about 10 seconds. That's a pneumatic I use. I always cheat on the 30 words. I sometimes hedge on the 3 points. I start with a value statement. I give 3 supporting details and then a call to action or whatever it is that I'm looking to do, whether it's to change the point. And I think about it ahead of time and I get comfortable with it. And then I make a plan for my media interview. Why am I agreeing to talk to this person? What are we talking about? And if I had the druthers, what story is it that I'm trying to tell, right? Then the don'ts. Don't try to know everything. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I think someone else would be a better source for that. Or I'm not sure about the speed at which lending grows in these circumstances, but I've got a book. I can look that up. You don't have to know everything in real time. And you don't have to say anything you don't want to say. So if you don't say it, they don't have it on camera. They can't quote it in the newspaper. So if you hear a question that's got words that you don't like or ideas you don't like, you don't have to repeat that. You don't have to agree to it. You can answer the question you wish you were asked. And then 2 just really practical tips. At the end of an interview, especially if you don't like doing interviews, if you haven't done many, you're looking to be done. You just want it to be over. And they almost always, Paula, tell me if I'm wrong, almost always the last question that they ask, is there anything that we missed? Anything important we should have talked about that we didn't? A lot of times I see people go, nope, we're good. I'm out of here. That is an opportunity at the end to say the thing that you wanted to say. Not only does it give you a chance, again, to say what you think is most important, from a practical, technical standpoint, it's the last bit of information in the reporter's notes or on the TV or radio reporter's tape. It's easy to grab, isolate, and clip into the story.
Yeah.
It is the always answer that last question. And then unless you're live, you are not in an inquisition. I sometimes get talking and start running downhill really fast and I get tongue tied and I forget where I'm going, forget what I say. It's okay to say to the reporter, oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Could you ask me that again? I'd like to start over. Because they want the same thing you do. They want you to clearly and succinctly share the information that you think is important. That's what they're looking for. So they want to help you do that. So don't be afraid to say, man, I got a little tongue tied or I misspoke there. I'd like to go back. So that's 2 don'ts, 2 do's and 2 tips. And if you do that, you'll do better than 90% of the people who are interviewed about anything.
Yeah, reporters want a good soundbite. They don't want to have to splice through your rambling 4 minutes. So if you know, oh man, that was not great, you can just say that. And then that end can be almost think of I wouldn't say think of the other part as practice, but say you got a point, you touched on something and you really were, wish I could have said that a little different, or I'd like to come back to that. It's almost like a second shot at it if you think you can deliver it a little better, a little snappier, a little tighter. So you can use that end part there.
You wouldn't go into a meeting with investors, potential investors, or your board and not have practiced and not have thought about what you want to say and what you want the outcome to be. And you should treat it the same with the media or a sales call. You go in with a story you're trying to tell, and you should do that when you're dealing with the media.
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
Never be afraid to ask for the questions, not that the questions aren't going to change, but ask them for their baseline questions that they want, of why they've reached out to you. What are the questions we're going to discuss? I don't do these interviews myself. I set them up for the ownership team. But I will not send them into a room with guns pointed at them, never.
Yeah,
I make sure I ask ahead of time, give me 5 questions that you want to concentrate on so that we're prepared.
Yeah, depending on the reporter and the nature, sometimes they'll give you that, sometimes, they won't, but it never hurts to get a sense of what this is going to be about. Same if media calls, don't just jump into a conversation necessarily. Good rule of thumb is ask like, okay, what kind of story are you covering? What's your deadline? And then you can pivot to something like the classic one is, all right, well, I'm about to head into a meeting. I know your deadline's 5 o'clock. Let me get back to you in 45 minutes when this meeting wraps up. Whether or not you have a meeting is irrelevant. That gives you a little bit of time to go through and do that prep and then get back to them. But if you just launch right in and start answering questions, then you haven't really thought about it and you're not in control, of your narrative if you haven't given yourself that pause.
Yeah, you really need to understand the context. It's the 2 very different scenarios where, like in the example I gave, we're trying to give our readers some ideas of what to do this fall and we're giving them, brewery tours ideas. Okay, well, that's if you're a brewery owner, that's a pretty easy question to answer. If you're in the flooring business and the reporter says, oh, we heard that you're still using asbestos in your tiles, that's a very different conversation, clearly. And so absolutely never want to go into a cold and you want to be prepared, I think.
For me is owning that narrative is build relationships, get cell phones, pitch your own ideas. I would say probably at least once a month, I'm sending a reporter an idea of a possible interview. Again, owning your market, giving them the topic that you can talk about gets you a lot more comfortable with what you're going to talk about. And I would say it hits about twice a year. But it also plants the seed of a possible, interview going forward. And then always be available by text, phone, email, to at least answer the questions. But I like taking control of the situation. I'm a little bit of a control freak if you haven't figured it out yet. Is turn it back around where you're their resource. Where you're actually reaching out to them about things that are going on in your industry that you think are noteworthy, are positive. Or what are positive about your specific business, like building a facility that's more sustainable, less energy, so on and so forth. Take that initiative to kind of reach out and do that positive PR to them. And then it puts it on their radar and they may talk to another reporter that needs to get something. And it may not be the person you normally are working with, but it's someone else in the news media that actually comes to you. So,
Yeah, from the publisher's perspective, that type of proactive marketing is, I think, very important. We're all very busy. I know my reporters have, not enough time in the day. And if they have a couple of resources that are being proactive with them, as Tom said, it might not be this week, it might not be next week, it might only be a couple times a year, but you're top of mind with them when when something happens, they need something, they're gonna call you first. It's the same, marketing, that's how we kind of frame our print marketing, is that you want to be top of mind. If there are 10 insurance companies in our market area, and 2 of them advertise, our readers are going to call the 2 that advertise. Not that week, not that month, but it's just about that constant repetition. And I think, Tom's approach is a really good one, because when we're doing a supplement, oh yeah, we're, for our home and garden, we need an expert about what to plant this year. Well, who are we going to call?
Yep.
The person who's been reaching out to us. So he is number 1 on the list as an expert in that field, and is going to get prominent, placement in an article that is free, doesn't cost you a dime. So that type of native advertising and native marketing, I think is extremely, extremely powerful.
And I think lastly, for me, is it's okay to say no. If you ask the questions and it's not a topic that you want to cover, it's like, yeah, this one's not for me. I want to sidestep this issue and say, I'll give that to my competitor to try to answer that one. I'm completely fine with that. That's not warm and fuzzy enough for me. I don't want to talk about that. It's very rare that happens. But it is okay to say no. Sidestep the issue.
Absolutely. So I know we've covered a lot. I want to leave time for some quick questions, for anyone up here. So what do we have? No.
We were that good?
Yeah.
Wow. I guess
Mic
we
drop.
nailed it. All
So
right.
again,
Tom.
just a reminder, when you have an opportunity at the end,
Yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah.
okay. I mean, come on.
you're supposed to take that. Repetition is key
Yeah.
to retention.
All right. So I think,
I do have a
yeah,
question.
go.
Okay, yeah.
So we talk about our leadership teams taking the role of this, the whole control of how to spin, if you will. Is there any steps that we can have our employees take to just kind of beat that, that the crisis mode, sort of like preemptive, I don't know, like something that we can have our employees not react to, or maybe not escalate all the time, but maybe take care of themselves? Is there any?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to get with your senior leadership team or your team as it is, and make sure that everybody understands their roles. And then in terms of what you can do to help them prepare for that is, I'm sure Broadreach does it, you can run a tabletop exercise, essentially where you go through in an abbreviated form, a TikTok of a problem, whether it be an operations problem, a public relations, public affairs problem, and you can do kind of a practice run on it so that folks understand what they're supposed to do, what their roles and responsibilities are.
How to react, how not to react.
How to react, what not to react. And you can also have, the first reaction to a crisis is to get the team together. Right, to assess, to evaluate, to triage the level of risk. So you bring those folks together, and then you make sure that maybe roles change because the very particular thing requires roles to change. And I would say is the boss should insulate themselves from the management if your team is big enough, so that as the decider, you're not the minute-to-minute operations person, in managing the response. Because if you're doing the small details, you're not getting the big picture, and you're not filling your role as that decider, and whoever that is. But it's about the plan, and then like anything else, practice.
Yeah, I think just having, especially anyone who's kind of front facing in your business, know more of what not to do if something comes up. It's what, don't immediately respond on social media. Don't immediately start talking to a reporter. And people know if something does come up, here's who I reach out to. Here's that triage process. That way you're not having anyone create a worse situation unintentionally, when it really was that they were trying to do the right thing and they just didn't know what that was.
I would also, if you don't have a written social media communications policy, depending on how big your shop is, I would do that. And that written policy can cover things. How do we react to a negative social media post? What are the steps that we take? And what are the parameters of what we will or won't say in our own channels? What do we do if we get an incoming call that's a complaint? I'm sure you know how to handle, but if it's channel 6, what happens when that person calls and whoever picks up the phone, right? And so you kind of lay those policies out and practice them so that people know. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You know, if a media call comes in, you answer, take their information, and then who do I pass it to? You know, and then, you know, what happens at that point?
So thank you all very, very much. We really appreciate you guys being here, and thank you all for being here too. I'm gonna run around with my basket and a pen. So if y'all can fill out your survey for us, because it helps us do our programs. And then we'll give you some lovely prizes. Bernstein, sure, you said this was a really cool, yeah, you can show. Thank you.
It's not really a survey, it's a quiz. It's gonna be graded.
Yeah. And if you don't have a business card, you can fold